Who him? Shayla laughed, loud enough for half the table to hear. She pointed at me. That's just my +1. Nothing serious. The room echoed with chuckles. Plastic laughter. The kind you hear from people who smile too much at funerals. And I just nodded. Sipped warm white wine from a plastic flute. Pretended it didn't crack something inside my chest. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an awkward joke that didn't land. She meant it. The woman I shared bills, silence, and a mortgage with had just rebranded me in front of her former classmates as a nameless prop. And maybe that would have been enough humiliation for one night. But no. The universe was still loading bullets. From the corner of the ballroom, he appeared. Tall, tan, teeth too white for someone not in commercials. He wore a midnight blue blazer and the kind of grin that made you want to check your bank account and your girlfriend at the same time. Eli, Shayla shrieked. She shrieked. She ran into his arms. They hugged like the past 10 years never happened. Like I wasn't standing right there, blinking slowly, trying to understand what I'd walked into. Someone near me whispered, "High school sweethearts." Oh, of course. He led her to the dance floor. She didn't look back. Not once. I stood next to the buffet, chewing a dry cracker like it was the only thing keeping me alive. A waiter walked by and offered me champagne. I took 2. He winked at me. "You're gonna need it." I downed both. The rest of the night blurred. 3 dances. 2 shots. 1 kiss on the cheek that I wasn't supposed to see. I kept a smile on my face. I shook hands. I made jokes about traffic and taxes with strangers who didn't care. But inside, I was building a list. And Shayla? She didn't know it yet. But her +1 was quietly subtracting himself from the equation. By the time we returned to the hotel room, it was past midnight. I held the door open for her. She walked in first, kicked off her heels, and flopped onto the bed like she just ran a marathon, one fueled by nostalgia and poor decisions. The second she exhaled, she was already pulling out her phone. "Eli said we might all grab brunch tomorrow," she mumbled without looking up. "He knows this great waffle spot near campus." I didn't respond. I stood by the mini fridge, pretending to look for water, trying to steady the boiling in my head. "Brunch? With him?" I asked carefully. "Are you inviting me to that? Or am I just the +1 again?" She didn't even flinch. "You don't have to come if you're tired. He's just a friend." That word, just again. Just a +1. Just a friend. Just disrespect. I took off my tie and stared at it. That stupid burgundy thing. The one she picked. I dropped it in the trash can. She laughed, scrolling. "God, you're being dramatic." It wasn't dramatic. It was math. She subtracted me the second she saw him. I didn't argue. I just walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the closed toilet seat in the dark. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A number I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was spam. But then I saw the text. "You handled tonight better than I could have. Just wanted you to know. She used to do this to Eli too." No name. No context. Just that. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I looked at the contact photo of Shayla on my screen. We were at the lake 2 summers ago. She was smiling. Real smile. Before the justs. I got up, washed my face, stepped out. She was asleep, snoring softly, one arm draped dramatically over her head like a movie actress. I sat in the chair near the window, grabbed a notepad from the hotel desk, and started writing. Not a letter. Not a goodbye. A plan. It was quiet work, slow and steady. At 2:13 a.m., I slipped the first envelope under the door to the front desk, marked for overnight delivery. Then I logged into our shared bank account and moved half, exactly half, to a new checking account I'd opened 6 months ago when Shayla had joked that if we ever divorced, she'd keep the house and let me keep my vinyl collection. Another joke. More laughter. I stared at her while she slept. I thought about shaking her awake and asking, was it worth it? Calling me nothing? But I didn't. Because she wouldn't have understood the question. Or worse, she would have laughed again. Instead, I opened her phone. I know. But curiosity is louder than pride when your heart's been stepped on in heels. No password. Of course not. She trusted me. There were no flirty texts from Eli. No confessions. Nothing scandalous. But I found a note. If it happens, I'll say it was the champagne. He'll forgive me. He always does. That was it. No name. No date. Just that. I stared out the window. Watched fog roll in over the parking lot like a slow, creeping curtain. And that was the moment I decided I wouldn't make a scene. I'd make an exit. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She woke up humming. Actually humming. As if she hadn't laughed me into invisibility in a ballroom full of strangers the night before. She stretched, slipped into a robe, and asked if I wanted to join her for brunch. Same place Eli had suggested. Same group. Same charade. Are you coming or staying here sulking? She asked, brushing her hair in the mirror. You looked really grumpy last night. Like, painfully awkward. Maybe don't wear that face today. I smiled. But not the usual way. This time, it was quiet. Calculated. I wanted her to remember that smile. The one you give just before someone realizes they forgot to lock the door. We walked to the cafe a few blocks from the inn. The group was already there, a mess of mimosas, old jokes, and exaggerated memories that had all been polished for reunion storytelling. And there he was, Eli, sitting at the head of the table like he was still class president. He stood when she walked in, pulled her chair out for her. I wasn't even offered a seat. No one really looked at me. I could have been a ghost. A background extra in her big comeback special. The waiter came around. Young guy, college-aged. Looked half asleep until he got to me. Then he paused, leaned a little too close, and said quietly, "You're him, right?" I blinked. "Sorry. The guy from last night. Her husband?" I nodded, confused. He gave the tiniest nod back, then said, "Someone left a message for you. Under a coffee cup at the counter. When you're ready." And just like that, he was gone. Back to topping off orange juice like nothing happened. I sat through 30 minutes of sugar-coated chaos. Shayla laughed louder than anyone else. Eli touched her wrist every time he made a joke, like they shared a language no one else was allowed to speak. Once, I tried to chime in with a comment about the reunion playlist, and Shayla cut me off mid-sentence. "Let Eli finish," she snapped, waving me off like a kid who interrupted grown-up talk. I waited. When she got up to use the restroom, I stood and walked to the counter. There it was, an upside-down ceramic cup near the edge. I lifted it. Underneath, folded neatly, was a napkin with a handwritten note. "You deserve better. The staff saw everything. She's not worth staying invisible for." Okay, that was it. No phone number. No name. Just a single letter. But it was enough. On our walk back to the hotel, she held my arm. Spoke about going to the lake after checkout. "Let's take one of those old rowboats," she said. "Make a little day of it. Like the good old days." The good old days. I wanted to ask her when those were exactly. Instead, I nodded. "Sure. I'll call a Lyft to take us there." She smiled. "You're finally loosening up." I opened the app. Requested a ride. What I didn't say? That Lyft wasn't for us. It was only for me. Because back in our hotel room, beneath my neatly folded pajama shirt in the dresser drawer, was a prepaid debit card, a copy of our marriage certificate, and a sealed envelope addressed to Shayla, containing the words I had never been able to say to her face. Until now. As I watched her packing her makeup bag, humming again like nothing was real, I felt something strange settle over me. Not anger. Not betrayal. Relief. It was almost time. When we got back to the room, Shayla opened the blinds and let the morning sun pour in like it was some kind of spotlight. "It's a perfect day for the lake," she chirped, checking her reflection in every glass surface she passed. "Let's leave early so we can get one of the boats with the cushions." I nodded absently and sat on the edge of the bed. She thought I was checking my email. I was actually checking the Lyft ETA. 5 minutes out. She went to take a shower. The moment the water started running, I stood, crossed to the closet, and pulled out my backpack, the one I never travel with unless something is planned. Inside was everything. Passport, second debit card, power bank, the envelope I'd addressed to her, and a folded copy of the prenup she forgot we signed before the wedding. I slid the envelope onto the desk beneath the hotel's "Do Not Disturb" sign. Then I noticed it. Her ring. Shayla's wedding ring was sitting on the nightstand next to her perfume. I picked it up, held it in my palm. It was cold, heavier than I remembered. She had taken it off sometime between last night and this morning. Probably before she hugged Eli. Or maybe it was during that third dance, the one where her hands roamed a little too far south for old classmates. I didn't put it back. Instead, I put it in the envelope. My phone buzzed. "Your driver, Malik, has arrived." I stood in front of the mirror one last time. I didn't recognize the man staring back. This guy had sharper eyes, straighter posture. He wasn't sulking. He wasn't tired. He looked like someone who'd just walked away from something poisonous and survived. "From the bathroom," Shayla called. Did you pack the sunscreen? I didn't answer. I walked to the door, pulled it open, and stopped. There, in the hallway, just down from our room, was Eli. He wasn't supposed to be there. Not yet. Not at all. But there he was, hair still wet, like he'd just finished a shower too. He was wearing the hotel robe. Not his. This one had the monogram S.H. Shayla's initials. I didn't say a word. Neither did he. We just stared at each other for a few heavy seconds. His eyes flicked to the envelope in my hand, then back to my face. He tried a smirk, but it died before it could form. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something. Maybe explain. Maybe lie. I shut the door behind me before he got the chance. When I stepped outside, the morning was too beautiful. Quiet in a way that felt disrespectful to what had just happened. I climbed into the back of the car. Malik gave me a nod and asked, "Airport, right?" "Right." He tapped the wheel. "You traveling light?" I looked down at my bag. Lighter than I've ever been. As we pulled away, I watched the front of the hotel disappear in the rearview mirror. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was being dragged through someone else's life. I felt deliberate. I didn't leave her a fight. I didn't leave her a speech. I left her silence. And the man in the hallway to explain everything. By the time I reached the airport, the weight of the morning had caught up to me. Not in panic, no. In clarity. It was strange. Almost peaceful. Like stepping out of a burning building and watching it collapse in the rear view without even reaching for a hose. I didn't check in right away. Instead, I walked to the far end of Terminal B, past the chain restaurants and souvenir shops, to a quiet airport cafe with cracked leather booths and flickering lights. I ordered black coffee. No sugar. No cream. Just something bitter to match the moment. The first call came in before I even took my first sip. Shayla Mobile. I stared at the screen. Declined it. Another came 30 seconds later. Then another. And another. It was like she'd only just opened the envelope. Good. Let it spin. Let the silence answer her. I put my phone on airplane mode, even though I wasn't boarding yet. I didn't want to hear her voice. Not the apology version. Not the screaming version. Not the "it didn't mean anything" version. The server came by and asked if I wanted anything else. I asked for a pen. She raised a brow, but returned with a ballpoint and a napkin. I started writing again. Not a speech. Not a letter. Just a list of truths. For myself. For the version of me that was finally done being furniture in someone else's party. She didn't forget the ring. She removed it. He wasn't a memory. He was a plan. I wasn't a husband. I was a placeholder. I stopped at 3. That felt like enough. By the time I glanced back at my phone, I had 17 missed calls, 9 messages, and 1 voicemail transcribed from a number I didn't recognize. The transcription read, "Mr. Ward, my name is Charles Bennett. Shayla listed you as her emergency contact. She appears to be in distress and is refusing to leave the hotel. Please call me back." I blinked. She'd called a lawyer? Or wait. No, that wasn't her lawyer. That was mine. Charles Bennett was the one I consulted 6 months ago when she started staying out late with vague explanations and refused counseling. The one who said, "If you ever need to act, don't act emotionally. Act strategically." I opened the voicemail. It was him. Calm. Professional. He sounded amused, almost impressed. "Mr. Ward, I just received a call from the Belford and asking if I was reachable. Apparently, there was some confusion when you left. I want you to know, the packet you requested has been mailed, and all accounts are now isolated as we discussed. Should your wife attempt to access joint resources or attempt to contest ownership of any shared assets, she will be redirected to me. As always, well done. Call when you land." Well done. I let that phrase echo in my head. I hadn't heard those words in years, not from Shayla anyway. Nothing I ever did was well done. Just barely enough. Just fine, I guess. I checked the boarding pass on my phone. Still an hour to kill. I sipped my coffee, opened a blank page in my notes app, and typed a single line. What do you do when the person you love most is the one who's been preparing to erase you? Maybe one day, that would be the title of the book I never planned to write. I looked around the cafe. Everyone seemed to be in transit. Everyone going somewhere, waiting to become someone else. And me? I wasn't just going somewhere. I was finally leaving her behind. I was halfway through the flight when I finally turned airplane mode off. Not because I wanted to hear from her. I didn't. But something inside me needed to confirm that she was still unraveling, still spinning her web with no one left to trap. The notifications rolled in like a flood. 36 missed calls, 12 voicemails, and a message I didn't expect. From Teresa, Shayla's mom. Travis, honey, I don't know what happened, but she's in tears. Screaming your name. Can you call me when you land? I've never seen her like this. I read it again. Screaming your name. Funny how I had gone almost a full year without hearing her say it with anything resembling passion. Now, suddenly, my name had weighed again, but only after it was too late. I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder labeled Exit Plan. Everything was there. Copies of the prenup, a detailed financial breakdown, emails I'd collected over the past 6 months of her working late patterns, and a timeline of when her social media activity changed from married brunches to solo glow-up. I wasn't building a revenge file. I was just building the truth. Quietly, carefully. Somewhere over Kansas, I received an email from an account I didn't recognize. The subject line was simple. You were right to leave. No greeting. No name. Just a short paragraph. You don't know me, but I've worked at the Belford Inn for 2 years. She's not the first guest who's treated people like props. But last night was different. The way she smiled while dancing with him, then turned to you like you were just another valet. It was cruel. We see a lot, but we remember moments like that. I'm rooting for you. A friend behind the front desk. I read it twice, then closed the laptop. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I didn't feel proud. Just calm. Like someone who finally stepped out of the freezing rain and realized how numb they'd been for years. When the plane landed, I ignored the calls and walked straight through the terminal, backpack slung over one shoulder, like a man who was finally alone by choice. Back at my apartment, the one I'd kept under my name, the one she never wanted to move into because it had zero aesthetic, I turned on the lights, made a cup of instant ramen, and sat in silence. And then it came. A knock on the door. I froze. No one knew I was back yet. No one was supposed to know this address. I opened the door slowly, expecting maybe a delivery mistake or a neighbor. But instead, taped to my door was an envelope. It wasn't mine. No name on it. Just a small sticky note attached. Thought you might want to see what she tried to destroy. Inside the envelope, a shredded letter, taped back together. Her handwriting. Rushed. Sloppy. Panicked. I messed up. I know that. But you didn't even let me explain. I didn't sleep with him. Not this time. I swear. I just wanted to feel powerful again. You stopped looking at me like I mattered. He didn't. He looked at me like I was hers. Like I still had something worth missing. But now you're missing, and I'm scared I pushed you too far. Please. Please talk to me. The letter ended with a pen mark trailing off, like she tried to write more, but couldn't find the words. I folded the letter and placed it on my desk. Not because I forgave her, not because I believed her, but because it was the first time in a long time that Shayla didn't try to win by laughing. She was losing now, and for once she knew it. The next day, the emails changed tone. They weren't pleading anymore. They were desperate. The subject lines went from, please talk to me, to you're overreacting, to, you can't just leave like that, Travis. Somewhere in between, she called 3 times in a row and left a voicemail where she cried for exactly 45 seconds, then immediately followed it with a text saying, I didn't cheat, you paranoid idiot. It always amazed me how fast love could flip into character assassination. One moment I was her everything. The next I was nothing but the accountant who never grew up. I didn't answer. I went for a walk instead, a real one. No destination, no timeline. Just feet hitting pavement under a sky that didn't ask for explanations. That's the thing about silence. When you get used to it, noise starts to feel like violence. While I walked, I got a text from someone I hadn't heard from in 2 years. Wesley, my old college roommate. The only friend Shayla never really liked. Said he was too direct. Said he put ideas in my head. Maybe that was true. His text said, just heard what happened. You good? I saw her trying to do damage control online. It's ugly. I replied, define ugly. He sent a screenshot. It was from Facebook, a thread on the reunion event page. Shayla had posted, not everyone has the maturity to handle a moment of nostalgia. It was harmless. He overreacted. We're working through it privately. Privately? That was rich. I hadn't said a word publicly. I'd vanished politely. But she had to twist the narrative, spin it until she looked like the misunderstood victim of male fragility. But Wesley wasn't buying it. He called. Bro, he said the moment I picked up. I wasn't going to get involved. But she's talking like you stormed out for no reason. She even hinted you were dealing with mental health stuff. I stopped walking. She said what? That you've been distant for months. Moody. Insecure. That she was supporting you emotionally through a tough time. My throat went dry. She's setting the stage, I said quietly. Yeah, he replied. But here's the thing. People are commenting, and not all of them are on her side. I got home, opened the reunion page, read the comments. A few were what you'd expect. Fake sympathy, passive-aggressive questions. One guy named Nolan wrote, I mean, Eli was touchy, but maybe that's just how they used to be. But others? Others were colder. One woman named Tara, who apparently had known Shayla since middle school, replied, Don't rewrite history, Shayla. You've always liked attention more than truth. Another comment from a user named Meg22 read, Dancing with your ex and calling your husband a +1 isn't harmless. It's humiliating. I didn't comment. I didn't react. I just let her world do what it always does when the masks slip. Spiral. That night, I logged into our old shared budgeting app out of curiosity. We hadn't used it in over a year, but the accounts were still linked. That's when I saw it. Her card had been declined. At 3 stores. All within 20 minutes. Then I saw the withdrawal attempts. Back to back. She was panicking. And that told me everything. The joint account was frozen. Just like I'd instructed Charles Bennett, my lawyer, to do. No transfers. No emergency usage. No oops I didn't know explanations. Shayla wasn't in control anymore. And control was her drug. That night, I got one final call. From an unknown number. I answered it without thinking. Travis? The voice said. Female. Calm. Careful. Who is this? It's Jessa. From the reunion. I sat across from you at brunch. Shayla's old lab partner. I remembered her. Quiet. Observant. Smiled like she was studying everyone at the table. I wasn't going to say anything, she continued, but I thought you deserved to know. The night before the reunion, Eli was at her hotel room. I saw him leave around 2 a.m. I work front desk sometimes, part-time. I wasn't spying, I swear. But she signed him in under a guest name. I said nothing. She continued. I don't know what she told you, but the way you walked out, that was dignity, not weakness. Just thought you should hear it from someone who saw the whole picture. I thanked her, hung up, and sat in the dark for a long time. And for the first time since this entire nightmare began, I realized something. I wasn't heartbroken. I was free. It had been 9 days since I left the hotel. I thought she would have stopped calling by now, but Shayla never let go of something until she'd rewritten the ending to her liking. That's how she lived. Life wasn't about honesty. It was about narrative control. And I had shattered hers by simply walking away. But the silence was my superpower now. On the 10th morning, I got a knock at my door. I almost didn't open it. I was halfway through a cup of coffee, feeding emails into a new freelance consulting gig a friend had offered, something I'd wanted to do for years, but never had the nerve. Funny how peace makes you bold again. But something told me to look through the peephole. It was her. Shayla. No makeup. No designer bag. Just standing there in a wrinkled hoodie. Her hair pulled into the kind of messy bun she used to wear before everything became curated and calculated. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. She stared at me. Not angry. Not smug. Just small. And exhausted. I messed everything up, she whispered. I said nothing. The hallway buzzed with quiet tension. I didn't think you'd really leave, she added. Not without yelling. Not without trying to fix it. You always tried. That was the problem, I finally said. Only one of us ever did. She nodded. Her eyes brimmed, but the tears didn't fall. I went too far. I know that now. I wanted to feel powerful again. I was selfish. Eli was stupid. Nothing happened, not in the way you're thinking, but it was still betrayal. I was performing, pretending, like high school never ended. It did, I said. You just never moved on. She wiped her face, sniffed, then reached into her bag, pulled out a small envelope. This was supposed to be our anniversary card, she said. I bought it weeks ago. Wrote it the night before the reunion. I just never gave it to you. It doesn't change anything, but I thought maybe. I took it. Not out of forgiveness. Not out of hope. Just out of closure. She lingered another second, then turned and walked away. No theatrics. No last-ditch speech. Just silence and footsteps. I waited until the door closed behind her, then opened the envelope. It wasn't a grand apology. Just a short, handwritten note. I don't say it enough, but thank you for staying with me even when I was difficult. I don't deserve you, but I'm grateful every day. Maybe one day I'll learn to show it better. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, not as a keepsake, but as a reminder of how easy it is to fall for someone's potential instead of their reality. That afternoon, I called Wesley, told him I was taking him up on his offer, a consulting contract out west, a fresh city, a new start. You sure? He asked. That's a big move. I've already moved on, I said. The rest is just geography. 3 weeks later, I was standing on the balcony of a downtown apartment in Denver. The air was clean. The noise wasn't hers anymore. It was mine. A noise I chose. Traffic, music, laughter from people I hadn't met yet. And beside me, sipping wine, was someone new. Kelsey, a friend of Wesley's. We'd met by accident. Or maybe not. She didn't ask about Shayla. Didn't pry. She just listened when I talked. Laughed at my dry jokes. Said things like, "That's thoughtful," instead of "That's boring." We weren't racing into anything. No labels. No illusions. But as the sun set behind the city and she leaned her head against my shoulder, I realized something simple, something obvious, something I wish I had learned years ago. You don't have to be someone's plus one to matter. You just have to be someone who finally chose themselves. And I had. Finally.